All right, welcome to another Behind the Scenes Prospects Corner brought to you by Just Baseball Media. As always, I'm Jared Perkins. I got an awesome guest co-host with me here today, Tyson Shushkewich. Is that how you say it?
Pretty close.
All right. He's with Just Baseball as well, Blues Jays Nation and the Canadian Baseball Network. But we also have an incredible guest with us today, Ryan Chasse, pitcher with the Toronto Blue Jays, taken in the 17th round of the 2022 MLB draft out of Campbell. Ryan, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on and talk a little bit about your career. The first question I always kick off with is just give a little bit of background on yourself to the viewers, just for the people who don't know you, how you got to where you are today in professional baseball, and just some of the things you love to do outside the game.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah, so my name's Ryan Chasse, like you said. I'm from Apex, North Carolina. I grew up playing, Little League baseball, kind of like everyone else starts out, and kind of had a pretty normal career going into college and stuff like that. So I ended up going to school at Campbell, like you said, which is pretty close to home.
Yeah.
Got to play there for 4 years, which was an awesome experience. We had a really good team there when I was there, and they've even grown since I've left, and kind of a premier university school in the country right now, which is really cool to watch. And then, yeah, I got, like you said, I was, fortunate enough to get drafted 2022 last year. And, that was always a dream of mine. So that was always really cool, or has been really cool. And, obviously being able to play professionally is something a lot of people want. And, I can't say enough of how cool that's been for me over the last, year and a half. So.
Yeah, I'll let Tyson get into Campbell here in a second. But first question I have for you is take us a little bit into like the MLB draft process for you, right? You're a 17th rounder. What was that experience like? I know for a lot of guys, it's waiting for that phone call, waiting to get selected in those rounds. But what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was super interesting for me because, I was a little bit older than most guys that got picked on, the first 2 days. I was 22 at the time. Like I said, my 4th year in school, where everyone's eligible after their 3rd year at a 4-year school. So, I didn't really have a ton of it. I didn't really have any interest after my junior year. So, ended up going back to school, and I was a starter my entire life. And Coach Hare and Coach Robinson there decided that I was gonna go to the bullpen that year and kind of throw in that closer back end role, which ended up helping out a lot. Stuff ticked up a little bit, and that kind of put me on a couple teams' radars, I think. But the draft was not. There's a lot of waiting and anxious hours and stuff like that. But I ended up getting a chance to go up to the Cape to pitch. Coach Jamie Shubchak with Brewster was, a lot of guys that are older don't get to go up there, and he kind of took a flyer on me, and I ended up going up there and throwing pretty well. And I think that was a big part of why I got, the chance to get picked. But yeah, so I ended up actually getting drafted while I was up in the Cape, and kind of just sitting watching the draft tracker and hoping for a phone call. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome when you get that opportunity to get in front of the Cape, right? You're playing against basically everybody who's going to go into the draft. Do you have any mentors or coaches along the way, especially when you're in the Cape, that kind of helped you?
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple coaches. Like I said, Coach Robinson was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
He was there all 4 years at Campbell. He was really big on, he's a big part of where I am today. Coach Chris Marks was my freshman year coach at Campbell. He was awesome. I already mentioned Coach Hare. Can't say enough about him. He's awesome. I know you guys might have talked to him, but you should if you haven't. And Coach Shevchuk was awesome. Our pitching coach up there, Coach Raz in the Cape, was, he got a lot of good things out of guys. And I've had way too many coaches to name, but
yeah,
obviously have a lot of respect for all of them that have helped me on my way. So
that's awesome. Tyson, I'll turn it over to you if you got some questions.
Yeah, for sure. You kind of mentioned it earlier. Just you went to Campbell. One of the advantages of being closer to home, but also just I think a little bit of reflection. Looking back, and again, you kind of touched on this. How interesting is it just to look back at the program now and see all of these great players that you had the chance to play with, and even yourself, getting drafted? How is it, looking back and seeing Campbell, getting ranked so high and seeing success in college baseball ranking and being a part of that.
Yeah. The short answer is it's really, really cool. Like that, it was awesome. I remember texting with, Thomas Harrington got drafted last year as well, and him and I are pretty close, but texting him throughout the pro season, watching those guys, win however many games and get up into the like single digit ranked was one of the cooler things that we had seen. But like I said, it's close. Campbell's close to home, but it was also one of very few offers I had. I think I really had 3, and that was kind of iffy on the third one. So that was, it was close, but it was also my best option. And then, but yeah, when I committed, I remember their preseason rankings had just come out for the year, I guess, coming up, and I think that they were projected 5th. Like there wasn't trophies and trophies like there is now in that trophy case, So it's really cool to see how far we've come. And I actually should have grabbed them, but I've got 3 championship rings for my 3 years, and we actually have a wall. I think they call it the Hall of Fame in the little walkway, and the back wall is all guys I played with. It's like 16 or 17 guys that were either drafted All-Americans or like scholar All-Americans. So it's really cool to see.
And then, again, you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier. You were, primarily a starter in your last year there. You kind of moved into that more of that bullpen role. Take us through, I guess, a little bit just in terms of mindset change, right? Like, when you talk to a lot of different starters, they have routines and stuff like that. And then you move into a different role, like the bullpen. What was that like for you? And what do you think are some things that really helped you with the different role transition, if you will?
It's a good question. I think a big thing to note that it was really not comfortable for me. Like it was something I remember one time on junior varsity in high school. I pitched in relief once because it was the last game of the season. I think that was like the only time in my life I'd ever done it in like a game that meant anything. I think that the biggest thing was kind of figuring out a different routine where before I was able to script it down to the minute of 55 minutes before my start, I would go and stretch, and then you could kind of work from there. As a reliever, it's kind of like, oh, how quick can you be in this game? And that was very tough for me to kind of figure out how to do. And actually the conversation we had that I was going to switch happened like 2 weeks before the season started, I think. So I got to throw like twice in a weekend for the first time, like right before we started. But yeah, routine was really big for me. Part of the reason that I think it was easy is I had a couple of really good mentors to work with. Like our pitching coaches were awesome, but I've got a really good relationship with Ryan Thompson, he pitched in the World Series this year. We lived together for a little bit. He went to Campbell in 2015. He's been a big league reliever for a while, so it's obviously a really good resource to go bounce off a big league reliever of how do I do this. But he helped a lot. And then I think as a starter, I was always very competitive, where he kind of has a reliever to kind of get in there and fill up the zone and go right at guys. So I think that was a big part of it too, that I had some attributes. It wasn't a complete overhaul like I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you talked about how you talked to Ryan Thompson. I know he's a big guy that talks on mindset and kind of the mental side of the game. There's a huge physical change, right, when you switch from starter to reliever. But what are some of the mental aspects that went into? Were there any kind of tools, or like you mentioned, having a strict routine? I'm sure that's a huge part of the kind of the mental side that goes into it. But were there any kind of other tools that you utilize as well?
Yeah, I mean, he talked a lot about timing of things, where he would go and in the 4th through the 5th inning he would stretch because he's kind of available from the 6th on or something, like using a timetable on where you should be used in the game. But a couple things like he always told me that when you're warming up to have you need to have 10 throws and you're ready to be in the game. Like he prides himself in that, and I've kind of adopted that too, where I can be hot enough sitting watching the game that I can kind of hop up there, and if whoever's in the game needs help, that I'm going to be in soon. So kind of the warm up aspect, being able to land one off speed pitch in your fastball and then you have to be ready to go was one thing that he told me. But just obviously a lot of things that he's perfected over his, I don't even know how long, almost 10-year professional career at this point. So he was very, that was big for me. And then being able to go to the Cape and throw multiple times a week, where starters are only going to throw 4 times in the summer and go home, was big too. So
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of that helped you kind of with the transition to pro ball. But what's kind of been the biggest adjustment for you, right? You're drafted in 2022, finally got a season under your belt here in 2023. What's been kind of the biggest adjustment for you in professional baseball?
I think that's a good question. I think a couple adjustments where you're kind of in control of more in terms of your daily routines. Getting your stuff done is kind of on you, rather than you have at Campbell, you'd have a weight coach that would prescribe everything, and we have strength coaches with the Blue Jays as well that do a great job, but it's a little bit more on your own. And that was a big thing. I remember right when I got drafted, we got sent out to pitch, and we went to Low A, which was the Florida State League, and they were doing the ABS system and all the rule changes before everyone else did them. So that was really
Yeah.
big. That was actually a really, really big, step up for me, going from the Cape, which is pretty known for having strike zones 4 balls off on each side, to a robot. So that was a big thing for me. Bigger bases, you can't step off. There's a clock. The clock was probably the biggest one for me, actually. But having kind of, I think I threw 9 innings in 22 professionally. I think that was really big going into this year, where I kind of felt comfortable with the clock and with the robot umpires and everything else. So that was big.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tyson. Think about.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of end it with the 2023. How are you feeling? Because you did have an injury setback in the summer there. How are you doing heading into this off season?
I'm good. I was, like you said, I got hurt in early June this year. I had a tear in the muscle right above my lat, teres major. So I was out for, I think we ended up saying we were 5 weeks no throw, and then kind of built up till the end of the season, and then we ended up getting to the point where I was a little bit too close to send me back out. So I was healthy in September, and then I got to stay down there and throw some more to kind of build up for next year. So I'm healthy now.
That's good to hear.
But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, now that you have that health too, kind of what goes into your off-season routine, right? Is there some things that you're really focused on this off-season to get you prepared for 2024? And like, what are some of the things you like to do away from the game to help get your mind off of baseball sometimes?
Yeah. So like I said, I was down there for a couple extra months, got back, and I actually work out back at school. Like I said, it was pretty close, and we've got a group of 5 or 6 guys that are playing pro ball now that kind of all work out and throw together, which is awesome. But I'm down there a lot, doing a lot of lifting, trying to continue some of the strength goals that we've set at, like, kind of with the organization, and being able to just kind of hone my craft a little bit. I'm not gonna do too much in terms of like live reps right now, pitching wise, but being able to kind of build up and throw is important, kind of going into next year, because as you guys know, the seasons are long and got to be ready to go. Like, obviously, injuries are not ideal and need to be taken care of now rather than in June again. So that's a big part for me this off season, is to kind of prep myself for it.
Right. Yeah. And do you have any passions away from the game that you're really kind of focused on?
I do. I like photography a lot, and I actually
Very
got
cool.
into that a little bit while I was hurt this year. With our low A in the same city, I got to go out and take pictures and stuff for the guys, and that's really cool. I like cooking a lot, and I didn't get to do that at all during the season, so I've taken advantage of having a kitchen at home and stuff. But those 2 things, spending time with family, that I don't get to do a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you have so is it more like nature photography, or do you like taking action shots of humans? What kind of?
Yeah, so I had Tommy John in college and kind of actually a similar situation where I wasn't playing and wanted something to do. And so I started with baseball and I mostly do baseball, but kind of kind of mixes up depending on where we're at. Like my fiance and I took a trip to New York this last week and I brought my camera and did a bunch of
Nice.
okay, not nature, but building shots and stuff. So
That's really cool. That's really cool. Tyson, do you have any other questions? I have two more that I usually go into, but just thought I'd turn it to you.
Yeah, I got pretty much just one. Usually it's a question, and if I was doing an interview with a player such as yourself, I would kind of finish with, what would you say is your goal for next season? We kind of talked a little bit about the off season, but heading into next year, some players say, "Oh, I want to be at this level, or I want to have this, or I want to be healthy, etc." What would you say is your biggest goal for not even so much heading into next year, but next year just in general?
I think staying healthy is a really big part of it. I guess I'll two-part that answer. I said staying healthy is the first part, and then being able to throw a lot of innings and kind of prove my worth a little bit to the to the organization and kind of prove what I've got. Because again, I only got to throw 24 innings or something this year.
Right.
I'm used to throwing more than that, and so staying healthy, and then in accordance with that, being able to kind of extend a little bit throughout the season and throw a lot of innings would be my goal.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes sense. It's good. It's really good to see you healthy into the offseason. Everything went well. That's really great to hear.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and the last question I always kind of wrap up on because one, we like this podcast to kind of have an opportunity for fans to get to know the human side of the players, but we also want it to be a chance for future players to come and kind of learn from other athletes who kind of been through it. Like you talked about Ryan Thompson being kind of a mentor for you. If you had one piece of advice for the next generation of athletes kind of trying to go on the same journey, what would that be?
I would say, okay. My piece of advice would be not to worry too much about what's happening in the present in terms of where you're at. For example, I didn't play varsity baseball as a high schooler until I was a junior. A lot of kids are really worried about making the varsity team, and for whatever reason that may be. I didn't get drafted till I was 22. A lot of guys don't get picked that high. So, everyone has a time that, their time comes, and you don't always need to rush towards that, I guess. That sounds about right, I think.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a great thing to end on. Ryan, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us. We're wishing you nothing but success in life and in baseball going into the offseason and into next year as well.
Thank you guys so much for having me.